In time, all silicon reverts to fragments.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me as always is the regular crew. Let's get to the news. Let's see. Twilight, why don't you start us off this week?
Okay. Well, I'm getting to think it's be running. It's going to be running for 40 days and 40 nights at this point. It's been raining all day here in Kentucky.
There must be a Noah's Ark theme park within a couple of states of you.
I think there actually was one here at one time, not too long ago. And I think it shut down or something like that. I forget.
Have you had to deal with any more mudslides?
Not any that's keeping me from going to town at least. But one that does lead on the road I usually take to go to work has happened today. I wasn't working today, so that I didn't have to take the 4-lane to get to work. So the old road. But yeah, there's one that they're going to be dealing with throughout the night. I'm not sure if it'll be cleared up in the morning or not. It might be. I'm not sure though. But it's not going to be stopping me, so that's good. Unless unexpectedly I find the one that stopped me on New Year's Eve from getting home has happened. But yeah, mudslides are becoming a pretty serious issue here recently. Anyway, what else? I have unexpectedly gotten a gift, I think, from an unknown individual in the mail, a MacArthur study Bible. I'm not sure where it's from, though. It came from Amazon.
I'm going to assume the Gideons.
It's hard to say. But yeah, the name of the individual who sent this to me is somebody whose name I do not recognize. But yeah, it was clearly addressed to me. I don't know. Nobody's hacked into my Amazon account. The last gift ever I got, the last thing I bought from there was still the gifts I sent some people for Christmas back a few months ago.
Fun.
Yeah, I'm trying to sort that out. It's kind of neat, I guess.
Someone's telling you need saving.
Yes.
Jesus.
Except I've already been saved years ago. So.
Well, you might not be the right kind of save.
I guess not.
Yeah, some people are pretty picky about that.
Yeah, I know. But some denominations believe in the sinner's prayer, and some believe in baptism. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's a theologian discussion for another age.
Yeah. Anyway, besides that little mystery, I've been playing games for review this week, and that's about it.
All right. Teddy, you're up.
Well, most of my day's been total crap. My cat Noise either got in a fight with one of the other cats, scratched herself, or got cut on the oven or something. She has a pretty bad cut on the back of her ear. So we've been, spraying it with peroxide and making sure, it's not infected or we need to take her to the vet or anything. We try and figure out what the hell she did. So, we can keep her from doing that again.
Right. Well, is the ear itself fine?
The ear is fine. It's I guess, below it.
Okay. So, the ear isn't torn?
Yeah, correct.
Well, that's better.
Yeah. It's still like a really bad, I guess, spot where there like isn't a whole lot of hair, so I don't know what she did. Because it's the where it is, she couldn't have chewed herself. So she either got into a bad fight with one of the other cats, she scratched herself really bad, or she did the dumb and burned herself on the stove. So yeah, that's fun. And then there's some other things I don't really feel like talking about at the moment because everything is frustrating.
Like, I think I know what it might be. Like,
yeah. And the snow sucks. And as far as gaming news, I'm debating trying to get back into Project Cross Zone on my 3DS because I got the sequel at GameStop before I got Kingdom Hearts 3 and was like, you know what, I want to see about playing this, but first I need to beat the original, so let's fix that. And outside of that, I don't think there's anything else pertinent going on. Raids have been fine. And yeah.
All right. Galax, your turn.
So last Thursday, my PC that I use for a lot of stuff started having page fault in non-paged area and memory management blue screen of deaths pretty rapidly, and I tried to do some of the things you can do to diagnose what's wrong with those, but for a couple of them it blue screened in the middle of trying to do it, apparently. So I have ordered the parts to get a new computer because thank God I have enough savings for that.
Also, thank God you know somebody who's really good with computers and can price you out a nice one.
Yeah, Petty Fan, helped me get the parts, or pick out the parts, and someone that I know at work apparently used to do computer repair and stuff and knows how to put stuff together. So hopefully,
so you're gonna puss out and not be a real man and build it yourself.
I'm still gonna do it. I just want someone else to be there while I do it, so I don't do anything catastrophic.
So they can grab you before you try and do the stupid and put the wrong power thing in, and everything goes poof.
Right.
You know, use like half a can of thermal paste.
Luckily, most of that comes pre-applied because people are idiots.
Yeah, I've seen videos of those idiots.
Yeah, that's more usually when you're replacing something, I think. From what
They're still idiots, okay?
Oh, no, I'm not discounting that. I'm just saying that's why it usually comes up. It's usually idiot-proofed, except when you're doing a post-market mod thing. Anyway.
Right.
So yeah, it should be better than the one I have now. Unfortunately, my current monitors are not fully compatible with it, but that's okay because one of those hasn't been behaving well for a while either. But the main problem it has is that it won't turn off. That's not the worst problem to have.
So have you decided if you're going to get the TV and regular monitor yet, or gonna see what's on sale?
Tomorrow evening after work, I'm going to swing by Best Buy and Target and see what the market's like for monitors and small TVs. And we'll see how that goes. So that is most of what's been taking up my time because I've been on, even though I still have a functional laptop, which is how I'm joining here, I'm still kind of on like partial internet withdrawal, which is no fun. Because laptops are not anywhere nearly as good as multitasking. Luckily, the game I'm reviewing for this week is a Switch game, so I have been able to play that. I've already put in a couple hours. Unfortunately, it is a flight simulator game, which the main flight simulator I've ever had significant practice with was Rogue Squadron on the N64, so...
disappoints me that you haven't even played a Pilot Wings game.
I might have played one of them once, but we only had like 10 N64 games at all, and one of those was a baseball game that my parents got for mostly them.
I mean, Pilot Wings 64 was a thing.
I know. We might have even rented it once. I don't remember.
Fair enough. Anyway,
So, it has some things that I'm sure are problems, and some things that I think are probably just me not being very practiced at flight simulators. So, but yeah, we'll talk about that more. And hopefully, I should still have more time to put into it. Unfortunately, I'm also using the spot on my desk where I usually set my Switch up for my laptop, so that makes that a little bit harder to do while I'm doing other things. But we make do, and I'm feeling better now that I've actually ordered the stupid computer parts instead of just having that floating over my head as something I still have to do. So.
Okay. I guess it's my go.
Yeah.
Let's see. While everyone else here is still suffering the snow, I'm dealing with the mid-80s.
Rat bastard.
Where do you live?
Florida.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So I mean,
it's actually supposed to snow here tonight, although it's going to turn to rain. Unfortunately, it's been really melty, freezy here, so it's real. There's like solid ice underneath shit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I've driven at least 5 hours in the snow already today, just for work. It's crazy.
Yeah. I'm like, there are flowers blooming on the bushes outside, so.
I forgot what flowers look like.
They're pink. Yeah, I mean, it is supposed to cool back down in a few days, but this is the kind of weather you deal with in Central Florida, Central North, wherever. Anyway, let's see. So my big news is a vehicle exchange. The previous car I was driving has been upgraded. I'm not sure if that's the right word to use, but I have an SUV now.
Oh man.
Is it one of those like lease program thingies, or?
Let's just say that a better deal was involved. It's like, especially with what the car was worth, versus everything.
It was a good time to trade it in.
Yes, that's a good way of saying it. It's a Dodge Journey 2015. It's like, God, I haven't driven a SUV since last decade. I'm getting used to being up high again, as opposed to being in a normal car.
That's actually one of the things I like about having an SUV. I mean, SUVs are more common than regular cars in Maine because it's Maine. Yeah, but I really don't like being down low and feeling like I'm gonna get run over by everything bigger, but also B, when you're down low and even the SUVs have their headlights right at back window level.
Right. Oh, the previous car, I really hated its low center of gravity. Every time I'd say pull out of the fucking McDonald's or something, it would dip if I went a little too fast. Not fun. So I'm glad that's not a thing anymore. And I actually think that the new car is thinner than the one I was driving, than the actual car. That thing was wider. It's didn't do any formal measurements. It's just I've been hitting those bumps on the side a lot less. Let's see.
I've learned to love to drive SUVs lately. I mean, I work for a car company now, so I drive a whole bunch of different SUVs, and I used to hate them, but I don't know. Like you said, like being up high, you feel like king.
Yeah.
Driving around.
It's also, I feel like if I get into an accident, the other one will suffer more.
Yeah.
But that aside, yeah, it's like game stuff. I actually had to do a bit of switching around this week's reviews. The big game we were supposed to review this week actually has a major problem with it. It's a known issue. They're fixing it. They're looking into it, but we don't know when that's getting fixed. So that got tabled until that's taken care of. So it's a mishmash of smaller titles and something I just pulled out of my archives because Silver is celebrating its 20th anniversary. And that's a bit of a segue as ever to the interview portion of our broadcast. And joining us this week, something a little different. We have John Delia of Retroware TV.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. No problem. Usually we do our show is about game development, but we do have the occasional foray into the larger segments of video game culture, I guess is a good way of putting it. But anyway, usually we like to start by asking our guests how they got interested in video games. And
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, so yeah, guys, thanks again. So I'm John. I'm from Retroware, and yeah, it's been around for a little while now, I guess.
Yes.
Quite a while, actually. I was looking back at YouTube. But in terms of gaming, I mean, I'm 38 years old, so my first video game system that I remember was my dad and I going to I think it was Caldor. I don't know if you guys know Caldor. It used to be like the very northeast thing. It's kind of a department store before everything was Walmart and Target. And he loved pole position. And I remember as a kid loving to play Centipede in the arcade. I must have been like 4 or 5, standing on like a milk crate or something. But he picked up an Atari 5200. And I mean, I remember many nights him trying to fix controllers that were constantly breaking because they just constantly broke for the Atari 5200. Taking them apart, getting frustrated, realizing he has no skills in fixing those things. But when they were working, that was my first console, and I mean, I loved it. And from that point forward, these were the toys that I wanted, like at Christmas. These are the gifts I wanted to get. I mean, the Atari 5200 was the big one, and then when I got the NES in 1987, that was it. That game culture, everything about gaming, the Japanese stuff, learning about what was happening where, pre-internet, before you could, you were just clamoring for pictures in game magazines or Nintendo Power. That was it. I just loved everything gaming, even more than the games themselves. It was just like what was going on in the industry, what was coming next, what was out there that we couldn't see here in the States. So I guess that would be where I started in the gaming interest area.
Yeah, I think everyone here can relate to that story. Not necessarily the systems involved, but certainly the introduction.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what my first system that I really remember was the NES, but we also my father had the older consoles, like the 2600. 2600s were still really common in even like the NES era.
Oh yeah, they pretty much were alive releasing games until like 1990.
Right. And for some reason we even had like a Magnavox Odyssey 2.
Oh yeah.
It's like memories are really faded, but I remember we had one of those. Like, just because, I don't think I've ever met anyone else who's ever had a Magnavox Odyssey 2.
No, I got one. I have way too many consoles, guys. It's insane.
Oh, it's like that. That's not a surprise though, because you are part of Retroware TV.
Yeah.
Which is kind of in the name, isn't it? Like focusing on the games of yesteryear. And
oh yeah.
It's like,
it's funny how that name came out too. I mean, we
Mhm.
My buddy Lance and I were the guys who started Retroware back in. We had the idea in 2006, and then we were kind of putting stuff together. We were talking about which review videos we wanted to do for YouTube, but it wasn't until 2007 that we actually started putting stuff up on our channel. And we were originally going to call it Reset, and we thought that'd be kind of cool. It had a similar, well, at the time it had a similar font to what we ended up using for Retroware, but we had learned that I think AOL or Yahoo had a video game related show or article series, or it was something very early in the video area on the web, and they had called it Reset. So we said, well, how about Retroware? Because we knew it was a term, but it hadn't been used for a show. I mean, there weren't a lot of shows back then, but it just stuck, and it seems we finally trademarked it, so it's actually something of it can be ours now. So that's yeah, definitely retro. That was the goal from when we started. Of course, everything that was new when we started is retro now, so that's always interesting.
How do I put
That's
this?
the way it goes.
Yeah.
Well, it's also you've endured throughout the ages because, well, a lot of video content from the mid 2000s just kind of crumbling away. Like,
Yeah. At best, some of them are doing their reunion specials.
Well, it's more like Machinima being retired and Screw Attack being retired.
Oh yeah, I mean Screw Attack definitely predates us, not by much, but they were always bigger, and they were definitely a big business. And I think that was one of the reasons that we've kept moving, was that this was never our primary. Like Lance and I, we met working in television, and we had always. But we became friends working at a TV network, but we weren't making shows. We were kind of doing more production behind the scenes kind of stuff, and we wanted to do more creative things because that's what we went to school for. That's what we loved doing, and we found out that we're both like rabid video game collectors. So we had this appreciation for games and history and more obscure games. So that's what made us decide to do a show, because we had always loved Angry Video Game Nerd or Angry Nintendo Nerd, as he was then, and some of the smaller shows that were bleeding through into YouTube, and we thought, hey, let's take a serious approach. Let's make a show that's like purely about things that people haven't seen much of, or where we can dive into the history, or review a PC Engine game from 1993 that nobody has ever heard of, but if they can get their hands on it, would actually be really cool. So that was always the thought. And but we always had jobs. We were always doing this sort of as a hobby. And even though it got more serious as the years went on, we never had to worry about shuttering it, because we would have ebbs and flows and heights and lows, and we've had that. We're definitely not as prolific as we once were, and having a website host or having a website home base with a forum, hosting videos or embeds of videos, it's not kind of how people ingest the stuff anymore. So the site itself is not as updated as it used to be, and it didn't matter. I mean, we could just keep going, and we still make videos, even though they're fewer and far between right now. But we still have guys that are associated with us, and we made tons of friends along the way. So yeah, we've kept going. It's crazy. I mean, yeah, with Screw Attack closing, I mean, that hit us kind of hard. I was like, oh man, we tried to get on Screw Attack before we even started doing our own thing.
Right. Like, yeah, it's like I remember, their game trailers days, like, AVGN and the top 10s and all that stuff, and some of that stuff is actually still around in like another area. Like, it's like they moved, but it's like now it's all
Death Battle or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like it's also you've retained control of Retroware, whereas like Screw Attack got sold off to Rooster Teeth.
Well, actually, you caught me at a fun time, because we've actually, while we still own Retroware, like the LLC and everything, the brand name and everything. We because we love the brand so much, and we know. I mean, Lance and I both have 2 kids apiece, jobs, mortgages, the whole thing. We we don't have as much time as we used to have to work on this stuff,
Right.
but we don't want it to languish too much. So we sold the brand name to Screenwave Media, and they're one. Yeah, and I don't know if you're familiar with Screenwave, but they got a lot of the guys under their, they're under their YouTube network, and Screenwave is, they're associated with AVGN, and all those guys are under that YouTube umbrella. So we're hoping that with that, even though it's more of a partnership than it is a full outright sale, it's just kind of like the control is with them. I'm hoping they do something, new and awesome with it, because I don't want it to sit around. I don't want it to languish as a brand name. I mean, it's something that we never had any crazy drama, really, with the name. It's always meant quality for this kind of like independent video game commentary or documentaries or short form videos. It's always been sort of, we've always meant it to be something of substance or quality, and it's sort of sustained that over the years.
No major problems with reports of leadership that doesn't care about the talent, or people who don't know what they're doing, or people who rent large spaces and then realize they can't use them for anything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were never dishonest with the guys that were, or the girls that were part of our shows, or part of the website. It was, we didn't have a big payment plan for these things. It was very much like a family or a group, a place to like combine forces to grow an audience. And that was really the goal. I mean, a lot of people have come through Retroware over the years and gone on and left. We were almost like the minor leagues for people. Like any number of, Peanut Butter Gamer, Ben Zai, Happy Video Game Nerd, you've known, Pat the NES Punk. All these guys, the Game Chasers, they all came through Retroware at some point, and then you know what? They started getting bigger and they wanted to do their own things. And we always wished them well and said, by all means, go ahead. Thank you for being with us. We're all buddies still. Let's maintain friendships, and yeah. And it's, and so we've always been happy about that. And, we never overpromised. Even when we thought we would be bigger than we were getting, and when we, we're working really hard, and honestly, to very little income opportunity for like the guys who are working on video game years, for example. It was just a great project to be a part of, and that was something good. But yeah, no drama. That was always the biggest thing Lance and I said. Let's try to avoid drama as much as we can. Because the culture and the industry or the culture of like this kind of video game commentary, and you look at all the different groups that have had some sort of infighting or harassment issues or things like this. It was something that we always tried to never have on our doorstep. It's like, let's not do this. That's not what we're looking for. So I think we did all right.
It's a good philosophy.
Yeah.
And let's see. It's also retro content on YouTube. Isn't the biggest money maker in the world.
Oh no. It's definitely true.
Gotta do the newest thing to get up with that algorithm.
Gotta get that Fortnites and the PUBGs.
It's so funny because that stuff, it evolved so much over the last 10 years. It's evolved so much over the last 2 years. What content should look like. When we started, YouTube was all low res. It was a 10-minute limit for videos, and there were no ads. And it wasn't so algorithm heavy. When we started, Google didn't own it. It was just YouTube. And then it became more apparent that you could build a really big audience there, and then once they started monetizing videos, that was great. But we had kind of abandoned YouTube early on, and it was because we were getting an audience, we were getting a fan base, we were getting people that we would meet at shows, and we would do panels at various shows, MagFest, even PAX East, and all these different things. But in order to monetize the videos, we needed a platform that would actually throw ads against it. And back then, there was Rever, and then there was Blip.tv, and we ended up utilizing those more because they would put ads on things, and then we would be generating most of our views not through Blip or their homepages, but through our homepage and our embeds. And it became, and we would encourage some of the other guys to do that too, but it became clear, and we kind of missed the boat a little bit. That's why our subscribers, even though we have like 57,000 subscribers or something, I mean, we should have way more than that by now. And it was really, we just didn't really cultivate it through YouTube. And we definitely missed the boat on that because we were going after what we could go after at the time. And we were ahead of things in that way, but we also fell behind. So, yeah, we're not doing too many new game stuff. And our formats, it used to be short form, and now it's like everybody watches their stuff either on their phone or through like an over-the-top service on their television or game console. So now long form is more, longer videos make a lot more sense. And it's funny, we were doing longer videos before that made sense, and we didn't care. It was like, well, this is what we're doing. And yeah, we've been ahead and behind on a lot of things.
I mean, we can certainly relate. I mean, we've been doing this for 5 years now. Like
Specifically this show, but yes.
Yeah. Well, it's like I've been doing various broadcasting things since 2009, but it's like, it's like being small has its downsides, but it has its upsides. It's like we can do whatever we want, really, and nobody's gonna care.
Yeah, as long as we don't break terms of service, who cares?
Indeed.
And in our field, we broadcast live on Twitch to record these things. It's like being a full-time Twitch streamer is just it sounds like the worst.
You couldn't pay me enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, they get paid. The top of the top get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to stream a game 8 hours a day every day. 7 days a week, no vacations, no overtime, no, it's like just, if you're not streaming, you're not earning.
Yeah.
And, it's like, I don't think anyone here ever wants to do that.
We take a break for, what is it, a week, and we lose 30 followers or some crazy shit like that?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like, 5 years ago, it wasn't that way. I mean, it's just a whole different animal now. I mean, content creators used to have more control back when people were dying to find content, and now content creators, they're more than a dime a dozen. I mean, they're just it's tough. It's tougher to make a living doing it. It's tougher to maintain an audience because people have so many options, and there's so many options now.
Right.
I have two boys, and they're like 5 and 7, but they'll be on an iPhone watching YouTube Kids, but they'll be watching games. They're obsessed with Minecraft right now, which is awesome because they're getting very creative with it. But one of them will have like an old iPad I have or an older iPhone and just have one open streaming, how to do certain things in Minecraft, and then have another iPhone to play Minecraft. Number one, I can't believe they can do this stuff on an iPhone. It's amazing. I'm like their ability to manipulate a touch screen is something I can't do like that, and it's just weird. It's just a whole different thing.
I can relate. Like I can type on an iPhone. I can type on my Android phone, but I don't like it.
Me neither. That's one of the reasons why I'm not doing as well without a desktop.
Yeah.
So, probably past the age where the phone was going to be my primary watching the internet device, but whatever. But yeah, it's especially stressful if you're chasing the trends. And sticking with a niche has its advantages.
Yeah. And it's not even just the trends of like the actual subject matter, it's the trends of the format too. I mean, like how you have to format a video or sell yourself in a video to to make sure that you're building your subscriber base. Smash that like button. Make sure you comment below, and then you do all these call to actions in these videos that you're trying to get people to engage.
Yes.
And that was one thing that was kind of cool about, which was nice for us when we made like the video game years. It was always formatted as a 1 hour long show. We just cut it up into pieces to put on YouTube, and it made it a lot easier to convert that show back to full length when we wanted to put it on Amazon, for example. So when we got it up on Amazon, we did have to go through a few edits, and it took me honestly forever to get things all in place and make sure the full episodes were perfect. But it wasn't as hard. I'm not popping up on screen every 5 seconds saying comment below. The first 100 comments, I'll do a raffle, and you'll get a new Nintendo Switch. I'm not doing that stuff, and we never did that stuff. It was very much basic television production, even though we were pumping it through YouTube. So that gave us a little bit more of a life with that show.
Yeah, I'm like, we've done we mentioned the occasional subscribe button thing, and we've ruthlessly mocked the whole smash the subscribe button, because
Fragments of Silicon is not liable for what happens if you try to actually smash the like button.
Yeah, yes.
Like my 70-year-old really wants to do a YouTube channel, and he wants to do games, but he also wants to do like Pokemon pack openings. And we started doing them, and he's like, yeah, you could do this thing here and this thing here. I'm like, oh my God. He's like, I used to be big on YouTube, buddy. I'm not anymore, but and he's like, no, this is what the guys do. I'm like, okay.
I will warn you that trading card game pack openings still involve actually buying trading card game packs.
Yeah, I know.
You know what they say about trading card games.
Something meth is cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell.
Frack is cheaper. Meth actually is.
Yeah, we just made use of his Christmas gifts this year. Let's open up some packs.
Yes.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it's like those can be very obnoxious, especially if you know what they are. Like, which is why I'm glad Patreon exists. Like, because honestly, that's what a lot of creative types who, don't make enough ad rev use to supplement themselves.
Yeah,
Bringing art back to the Middle Ages, only with crowdfunding instead of just one rich person.
Yeah. We had when ads weren't working, when we needed to fund the video game years, we did an Indiegogo for it, and that was successful. Not nearly as much money as we could have used to actually make the show. It was amazing how little we spent to make the show. It was just absurd, actually, and how little people were, like editors and graphics guys, were getting paid to work on it. They did it because they loved it, but we tried to give a stipend of some sort, and it was just so small. I can't believe. It was just ridiculous. I'm amazed it got finished. It took a while, but that decade got finished, the '80s. But we never did a Patreon. It's like I feel like we should have, but I just knew our content release, Lance and I in particular, was if we were doing our standalone video game docs or review videos, we just weren't as consistent enough, and they just didn't feel right doing one. But yeah, maybe soon.
And I suppose we should go a bit more in depth in the video game years, since it's probably the highest profile project that is of Retroware itself.
Yep.
It's like, where did the idea come about to do this video game retrospective series?
Well, it was an idea that I came up with back in, it must have been 2010, maybe a little earlier. It was I was talking to Lance, and I even talked to Pat about it. And when Pat was on board, and he was like, that's a good idea. It was just an idea that, like, let's do something like I Love the '80s. It was exactly like the VH1 series. Let's get talking heads. We'll be slightly humorous, be informative, but it'll be I Love the '80s, but just for video games. We'll go year by year by year, hit the main topics, have talking heads on screen, like waxing nostalgic about the games, giving some history, giving some perspective. giving their thoughts if they weren't from that time period originally, but they're all familiar with those games because everyone that was involved was obsessed. It really just it came down to us needing a good network or group of people that we could call on to work with us on it. And when I came up with the idea, we just didn't have enough guys. We just didn't have enough people that it would make sense to do. It would just be like, Lance and I and like two other guys going back and forth. It just would have been completely boring. So we wanted to get like the greatest hits of, online video game personalities and some historical figures that we could get our hands on or get in front of the camera at certain places. And that's how it came about. And then, I was the guy who, for the 1970s episodes, like I laid out the structure of what the main topics would be, with some input from the other guys, like Joey from 16-Bit Gems and Pat and Ian from Pat the NES Punk and the Totally Unnecessary podcast and all of that. And they were, they would help give some content as well. But before we had any editors, I honestly did the entire first few episodes myself, like from the rough cuts to the green screening, to the effects, to the B-roll, to everything that was layering over it. And that was such a giant pain in the ass to do. And I wasn't great at it. I was okay, but it was definitely flashy when it first came out because it had a lot of people on it. And then when we had other people wanting to get involved, we had a big team of other content creators that were editors and guys that would do CG graphics, and they would do it for almost nothing or for nothing just to have the exposure. And, we got a narrator to do the intros, and he did it for nothing. He did it because he wanted to be involved and he liked the idea. And we just, put it together. I mean, ultimately it was a ton of work, but yeah, that's how it started. It started with ripping off the H1.
I'm like not the worst thing to do.
Yeah.
About the 80s stuff.
Oh yeah, I love that format. I mean, I still love that format. Like the whole talking heads goofing about history and not being, pop culture stuff. Just kind of, not getting too in depth, but right. Covering the top level stuff, making video game history approachable, just like I Love the '80s made pop culture events just sort of high level, and that was right. That was the thought.
Yeah. So, like, when did things really, when did the video game years move to like multiple editors and whatnot?
I say it started with the third year. So, I mean, we were releasing, like, when we put out we started with 1977. And we started with 1977 for a couple of reasons. One was, it was the year the Atari VCS or the 2600 came out. So that was a real big milestone for home video gaming. And then it was also the ability for us to get our feet wet for 77, 78, and 79. So by the time we hit the 80s, we were a little bit better. Although we had kind of a well-oiled machine, or as much of a well-oiled machine as we could have. So we started using other editors in the I think it was the 79 episode. It could have been 78 too, actually. At first, it wasn't many. It was basically like, hey, can somebody take all of this green screen footage? And we had, if we had the Game Chasers, or we had Norm or Dan or Pat or all these guys on the show, we gave them the requirements. We said, look, you got to film yourself with a lav mic, and you got to have a green screen behind you, and it's got to be in HD, and just shoot yourself. Look off to the right or to the left, however you feel comfortable, as if you're talking to someone off screen, and just talk to these topics. And when you're done, upload your footage to this shared server that we had, or whatever shared cloud service that we could get for the cheapest we could. Upload it here, and then we would have an assembly editor who was they'd be assigned, like, okay, you get Space Invaders, okay, you get Mega Man, They would go in and pull down all the footage. Usually, the guys who would submit the footage, they would cut it up. There would be one video for their Mega Man talk, another video for their other topic, but everybody did it their own way. Some people just uploaded a gigantic video, and you just had to go through it to see where the stuff was. They'd speak about one topic and then speak about another. So people would go in, pull out the material, and then do an assembly cut. So there was no keying of the green screen or anything, but we would have an assembly editor do that. So the first maybe 78 and 79, I think that we had maybe like maybe between 2 to 4 people helping out, and then ultimately 1 or 2 guys would also take on the job of doing the final edit. The making the green screen, keying, adding effects, adding the footage of the video game in the background, graphics, and they'd really make it their own. Pat and I in particular were involved with, okay, if somebody did a rough cut, like an assembly of the like we mentioned before, like the Magnavox Odyssey 2. Okay, we're gonna do a piece on this. It needs to be no longer than 3 minutes. Put all the footage together, put it together. They would then upload it either as like a private video on YouTube that we could review, or they would put it somewhere else and we would download it and watch it. And then we would come back to them with notes, like say, hey, this is going too long here. Can you find something? I'm sure somebody spoke about this. Can you add this in? And then they would make a tweak to that. And then once we signed off on the assembly, Pat and I would do that. Then it would go to the final cut. And then the final cut guys, that's why our show wasn't always consistent looking. Like some segments would look better than others. It's because other guys were doing it. We'd have other people editing. And, we would have, the GameSack guys would be editing a segment, or the My Life in Gaming guys would be editing segments, or Living in 8-Bits guys would be editing segments. So it was really a group of people, not only in front of the camera, but behind the camera too. And ultimately, we would give a sign off on the final cut, give some updates if we needed some updates, and then the final job was left to me to assemble it all into a package. Making sure that the on-screen titles were there, making sure the intro worked, and then my job was also to cut. I personally did all the work for the little standalone segments, like the other arcade games of 1983, I would do all of that. So that was my role. I'm like the final cut assembly guy, graphics, and then I would do those standalone segments. But yeah, by the time we got into the mid 80s, we had up to, between the final cut editors and the guys who would do the first assembly, we had like 12 people working on it, 12 editors. It was a pile of people. And it was good. We made it get it done, but it was a lot to manage and try to keep moving.
Now, was the video game years always supposed to charge 77 to 89?
Well, it was. It was always the goal of getting through the 80s. So once we got to like the 1978 episode, we realized if we're gonna do this, it can't be all on my shoulders because I don't have all the time. None of us have all the time. We need to get people to do it, and we need to be able to give them some money. Like something basic. We would pay very little. It would be like if you do an assembly cut, you get like $10. If you do a final cut, you get like $15. And honestly, I'm just throwing those numbers out there. I don't even think it was that much. So it would add up as people did more and more cuts, but. It was really their involvement in the show that they wanted to be in, that they were signing up for. But it wasn't even payment. It was like here's a little bit for your time. So we did that Indiegogo project or the Indiegogo campaign, and it was to get through the 1989 episode. So to do the 80s, and we had raised only about $12,000. So we were doing 1 hour long episodes. At about $1,200 of budget, 1 hour long, fully edited and formatted and ready to go episodes at $1,200 an episode, which it seems like a lot, kind of, but like no, it isn't. It's like an hour long show. Our final episode, 1989, ran almost an hour and 30 minutes, and it was just 1 year of basically, American video gaming. And yeah, I mean, we swallowed a lot of our own money for that. I mean, just the money that Retroware made through whatever advertising we had and DVD sales, it went back into the show. It was not a money making venture by any means until really until like we put it up on Amazon and it did pretty well there, and that was well after we had finished the show. So it had a new life on Amazon. But yeah, we had always intended on going past the 80s, and honestly, we still do. I mean, Pat and I have talked about it quite a bit. Lance and I have talked about it quite a bit. We kind of have a rough plan of how we'll go about doing it. We know it's been a while since we put the show out. I mean, it kind of was all new again when we put it on Amazon last year. So a whole new audience found it, and it got really popular for a short period of time. But it sustains itself for the most part. But it was really successful the first couple months. I mean, it was showing up on like popular TV recommendation lists and stuff. Like we were more popular than a couple seasons of The Sopranos for like a week, which was crazy. And it felt so good. It was like, oh, this is like some validation, some vindication for all this crazy work we did. And yeah, I mean, we were hitting that algorithm. We were getting the right people to watch, and it was connecting to other shows, and it was getting on recommendation lists. And I had friends that were like sending me screenshots of their Amazon Prime homepage saying like, look, your friggin' show's here. And I was like, that's amazing. I can't believe that. And that was great. So it kind of had this new life where it kind of bought us a little more time to figure out how to go back and do the 90s. But, we all have our own stuff going on. So it's been we know how much time this took. So we have to take a different approach to it to really simplify things. And also, if we do it, we need to do a Kickstarter that raises a lot more money, because we need to, if we're going to do this, we have to do this for real. And we need to have some real investment behind it to make sure people are, doing their best work. Not saying people didn't do their best work before, but like, hold people to the fire, be like, hey, we're paying you. And also to pay us. We never paid ourselves. As the producers of the show, we didn't get paid. We paid only the editors, and everything else was kind of like, well, let's see how much money we can make on the YouTube ad revenue or sales of the DVDs. And that was minimal. It wasn't great. And I mean, it was fine, but it would sustain us a little bit, but it wasn't anything near the amount of effort we put into it. But once we saw how popular it got on Amazon, we're like, maybe there is a thing we could do here. We just make a show, a real show. We just dump out, okay, video game years, 1990s, 1990 to 1999, bam, all at once, ready to go. And that'll be good, but we have to get it all done.
Yeah, well, I suppose the question in this direction is, has Amazon themselves expressed any interest in your program?
No. Other than approving us, there was no additional like, hey, we'd like to bankroll this show. And I was like, we were hoping maybe, it would be nice. I mean, given its popularity initially, but I could never bank on that. They have their own strategies going on, and they had a whole lot of changes to what they're doing for their programming. I mean, they're taking on Netflix, and they're doing a million different things. Our little show isn't enough for them, but it would have been cool. I mean, I'll say this: we're still willing to look at investors if they want to be involved at this thing, if they believe in us as a group that can put together some good stuff on the topic. We could definitely use a sponsor and some investment, but we think, if we're going to do this, we're probably going to do just the Kickstarter and ask for a lot more than we did the first time, and really make this something worthwhile for us, but also make it better than it was before.
Kickstarter probably would be the best bet, I'd say. Like, yeah. I'm like, and I do hope the 90s do get made, because I did enjoy the video game years back when it was new.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, I watched it in the YouTube bites.
Yeah.
and admittedly, that wasn't the best way to watch it because, you know, as you mentioned, they are full episodes cut up into bits. They're not, you know,
Yeah.
individual segments. That, you know, they were clearly not intended to be like 10-minute videos or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when we did the DVDs, they were all compiled into full length for the DVDs. We haven't made any more past the. I mean, we had 3 volumes, and we stopped because it's just, number one, nobody gives a shit about DVDs anymore. That's number one. Number two, they're DVDs. They're not even in high def, and it was cost prohibitive to do a Blu-ray, and still nobody cares about Blu-ray. I mean, when we put it on Amazon, we thought we were going to make money from download to own, you know, because that's an option. You could buy a season and download it, and then you have it. But what we didn't realize was how well it was going to do just on streaming for Amazon Prime members. Because like download to own, it was like, I think only a handful of people ever paid to download it. It was purely streaming that it did well. And I know, I mean, Amazon's probably changing their model a bit because Amazon had their Amazon Video Direct service, which is almost like, YouTube, except a higher end YouTube. You have to have certain parameters to get in. I had to go through a couple different revisions before they have final approval, and you have to have it subtitled or closed captioned. And so we had to pay for that too. But, there's a lot of services that do that pretty quickly, and we could layer that in without a problem. But it took a while to get it formatted because it wasn't even formatted like the DVD. I had to remove like the certain Retroware logos or the Video Game Years logo on the screen. They don't like the persistent logos. So I had to go through a bunch of stuff like to like go back to the original raw material to get rid of those things. I mean, we started making the show in 2012, and it was like last year that we uploaded final versions to Amazon. So I had to go back to like old Adobe Premiere projects, sitting on multiple old drives and reassign all the media. It was a big pain in the butt, but I knew it could be something special if we got it done. So I just put dozens and dozens of hours into getting it done. But yeah, I mean, I'd love it if we could do it again. And I know Pat just launched a Kickstarter for his Super Nintendo book, and I know that's a huge deal, and that was a big thing he had to focus on, so he couldn't spend a lot of time on this and on the Video Game Years planning. And I'm about to move my entire family across the country to like Michigan, and we've been working on that. So we kind of had to stop. We were hoping we would have a Kickstarter completed by like the fall of last year, and we haven't even gotten close to starting one. So maybe we'll do it this year, and hopefully people still care. I mean, I still get emails and messages and comments on videos, every other day saying, "Hey, when's the 90s? When's the 90s?" And that feels good because it's been a while, and if people have an interest still, I think it could still be cool.
Sounds like it. The drive is there.
Yeah.
Which is really important for making a project like this. So shifting away from the Video Game Years, are you still affiliated with any of the quote unquote external talent that have flowed through the Retroware halls?
Oh yeah. Affiliated is, we're all friends. I mean, like when we go to, like I was working with Lance, and Lance is still involved with an expo out here in Connecticut called Retro World Expo, and like I was part of the group to kick that off, and we had a lot of our old buddies, like the guys who were still on Retroware, the guys who had long been off Retroware. They came as guests, as panelists, or as people that would, they got invited as guests to have a table, do panels, and we were all next to each other. And some of us, if there's a Retroware table at MagFest outside of DC, the Game Chasers will use it. They'll be like, guys, you can, if you don't have a table, by all means, jump in. I know you're not Retroware, but we're all we're all affiliated in that way. So if we, and that's one of the things, we still have these connections. So if we continued the video game years, we would try to get these guys again. And not only that, we try to get new people, because there's so many new people who've worked on the show, and it's still a community of content creators out there. So it would be great to get new people involved, a lot more women. I mean, like, we only had Allie, 8-Bit Allie, as the only female that was on our show. And it was just a bunch of like goofy white guys talking about video games. And it was like, and it was never intended to be just that. It wasn't like we were only going to have white guys on here, but it just happened to be who we knew and who was doing this stuff. But now it's, we'll get a lot more people, and we'd get a lot, different perspectives, and we get probably more industry people. I mean, that's the goal, is that if we do the 90s, it's not just going to be just us guys talking. We're going to, get more of the content creators, like not video content creators, but game creators and people in the industry.
We know what we're talking about. Like, we encounter that like on a regular basis. People who who develop games who got started on the NES or earlier. Like, we've had some people who got started in the 70s and were working on mainframes and stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
Really interesting perspectives, no doubt.
And that's how, like, we had Howard Phillips on, and we had David Crane, and Tommy Tallarico, of course, and a few other guys. And honestly, the way we got them on the show was, we'd be at like the classic gaming expo in Vegas, and they'd all be there, and we'd be like, hey, we have a suite upstairs at the hotel. We got a green screen. We got a chair. Would you take 30 minutes to talk about some topics? And we spread it out. We'd be like, well, we're only at the point where we released the 1978 episode, but we know we're going to hit the 80s. So we would ask Howard Phillips about all these different games and releases. We'd ask some of the other game journalists, like Chris Kohler, to talk about all these different key points we would love them to speak to. Knowing that we would, of course, talk about it at some point in the show. And then ultimately we would have this material to jump back into. And it was great. And that's, we would bank this stuff and have it sitting there on our servers ready to go. So that's exactly how we do it again this time. Except new people.
Indeed. Like, and do you still produce content for Retroware? Like, I know you're down, but
yeah, we still do. And Lance and I have jumped into a lot more of the more ancillary things. Like, we've somehow gotten part of the whole like video game soundtrack release circle, where we do a lot of the vinyl video game soundtrack reviews. So a lot of the companies that have been putting out video game soundtracks, remastering them on special editions on vinyl, they'll send them to us for a review, and we do a lot of those. We've done I just recently did one of those tabletop arcade machines that have started to come out. A lot of the repros, like Pac-Man. There was a Bandai Numbskull Designs did a Pac-Man cabinet, so I did a review on that one. Yeah. I have the new Tempest tabletop replica just got mailed to me the other day, and Lance is going to do that review. So yeah, we have our sights on wanting to do a few new things, straight gaming documentaries, kind of like I used to do in the past, and we used to do. But it's just been a time thing, so we've been doing sort of these review things, little one-offs once in a while.
It's something.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen that Pac-Man arcade thing at the Walmart. Like,
yeah.
Right. So I'm going to see if my colleagues here have any final questions for you.
Sure.
I don't think I have anything off the top of my head.
Me neither.
I think you've explained what you've been doing pretty well. I am not personally super familiar with your work, but I might have to try and get that way, because I certainly
the video game years is good. I mean, that one's it's really just like this easier to digest history.
Yeah, I certainly like stuff like Game Boy Works and stuff like that other people do. So another one would be interesting to look into.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm like, well, John, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here this week. Like,
no, thanks for having me, and sorry to delay it a couple times. I appreciate you guys dealing with me. So
we're experts in juggling guest releases. Believe me, the delays happen for one reason or another. We're used to it. It's not anything we really sweat these days.
Yeah. Well, guys, thanks so much, and I wish you guys the best, and keep it. Keeping the topic of gaming culture and video games going it's so important to me. So I love it.
Oh yeah. I'm like, it's like we might have you on the program again if you ever get the Video Game Years Kickstarter on.
Sure.
It's like, but until then, the site is Retroware TV. The YouTube channel is Retroware TV. You can find the Video Game Years on Amazon. They've got it's like they may not have a lot of modern content, but they've got a pretty deep archive. Whether it be on on the YouTube and on their website, it's not just like video. There are podcasts, there are music shows, there are even articles. So
yeah, that's the thing that we are. I mean, we've had some site transitions, so it hasn't been updated as much lately. But those guys, those articles, those writers, I love those guys, and they've I hope the site gets tweaked again soon so that they can go back to writing more stuff. And their content's been awesome, and I'm glad that we had that place to really start pushing writing on there.
All right, so unfortunately we ran long this week, so no topic of discussion. This sometimes happens when we have guests that are particularly engaging. Like
I talk too much too, so yeah.
It's fine. It's like just talk about what we wanted to talk about next week. So, anyway, the week ahead, nothing slated for this Friday, but next week we do have a thing to do, and our schedule is going to be a bit intense next week. Looks like we're going to be doing things Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So more on that on Sunday, but Sunday reviews. This week we are going to be reviewing Almost There, the platformer, Sky Gambler's Afterburner, which is what Galax is working on.
Yep.
The free game Comet Crasher, because this is the thing that everybody can play. And we'll be doing a retrospective review on Silver, which is
the Chemical Element?
No, it's an action RPG that was released in 1999 for the PC and Dreamcast. Yes. More on that on Sunday, and until then, I wish you good gaming.